Compañeros, silencio por favor. Buenos días. Vamos a comenzar la reunión de hoy, como les había contado anteriormente, con un nuevo formato. El nuevo formato consiste en presentar un video seleccionado por los tres compañeros, por Diego, por Juan Felipe y por Kevin, que permita reunirnos cuando no tengamos el expositor, reunirnos en torno a un tema interesante para todos, pero que no perdamos la oportunidad mensual de estar juntos, que no pasen 2 o 3 meses sin podernos encontrar, porque no encontramos el gran expositor. Y comenzaremos el año que viene a partir de febrero. En enero se van los de cabalgata, nos contó Luis Fernando Peña, a partir del 20, como una cabalgata en otro país. No voy a y entonces continuaremos nosotros mensualmente, si Dios quiere, reuniéndonos en estas instalaciones mientras tengamos esa posibilidad, grata posibilidad, porque pues tenemos parqueadero gratis, instalaciones gratis y simplemente pagamos lo que consumimos. Vamos a comenzar entonces, Juan Felipe, haciéndole un homenaje al papá de Pablo, que como todos vimos en el chat, pues fue campeón de atletismo, y Pablo, ahora emulando a su padre, en homenaje a su padre, nos quiso compartir 5 medallas muy sudadas y otra ganada. Entonces, Juan Felipe, comencemos por favor. Bienvenidos todos los compañeros y los compañeros que están en el exterior. Esta charla al final no se iba a transmitir porque la mamá de Juan Felipe está hospitalizada hasta anoche en cuidados especiales. Gracias a Dios la trasladaron a una habitación, y Juan Felipe tuvo la generosidad de acompañarnos y de dar a su madre sola por compartir con nosotros este evento, y sobre todo con los compañeros del exterior. Gracias. ¡Que vive!
Ah, qué bueno. Estamos muy linda. ¿Dónde te quedas estar? Aquí. Paulín, ¿por qué con la camiseta del Valle? ¿Por qué con la camiseta del Valle? Ah,
en el video.
Muchas gracias. Quiero darle a todos ustedes, al Colegio San Ignacio de Loyola y a la vida. Por dejarnos haber existido, y hoy quiero dar un homenaje especial por mi padre. No podemos poner el video donde sale Felipe, ya no se puede volver a repetir el video, porque él no es mi padre, él es Valle. Listo. Pero él es nuestro padre. Juan Guillermo Restrepo Jaramillo tuvo 14 hijos, le doy gracias a Dios por haber venido a este mundo. Yo fui el número 14, un verdadero campeón. Él nos contaba una anécdota en esa, sí, yo soy el 14. Yo soy el 14 y él es el 12 de una familia de 12 hijos, o sea, 12 y 14. Y contaba una anécdota de las primeras Olimpiadas 1932 nacionales, fueron en Medellín. Ganó 3 primeros premios, o sea, 3 oros, 110 metros con obstáculos y me acuerdo en la memoria de niño que decía, nuestro padre decía que casi pierde, pero que se enredó otro corredor y ahí me di cuenta que era el del Valle el que se enredó, pero no sé quién habría ganado realmente. Otro premio fue salto alto y el tercer premio fue salto triple. Igualmente iba a ganar la maratón de 1932, o sea, los mismos Olímpicos Nacionales, pero cometió un error técnico cuando eso no existían los geles. Cada 10 kilómetros puso a sus sobrinitos y sobrinitas mayores con sancocho de gallina para alimentarse y obviamente terminó vomitando y se retiró. Este video se debe a nuestro hermano Carlos C., que lo encontró por el azar, nadie en la familia lo conocía. Hay memoria histórica de acontecimientos sucedidos en Colombia que se encuentran en Bogotá y hay más videos, todos nuestros antepasados seguramente están allá. Hay videos de la muerte de Carlos Gardel, que quizás no son todavía conocidos o muy escasos, la víspera antes de morir, cuando aborda el avión en Bogotá hacia Medellín. Le doy gracias a la vida y a Dios por haberme dejado como con unos malos tiempos, pero dentro del límite, y a otra haberme permitido en acción de gracias por la salud, por la vida, por la libertad, por tantas cosas, haber logrado terminar esas 5 maratones de Nueva York. Y los invito a todos para que lo hagan y lo logren, que es perfectamente posible. Lo único que se necesita es tesón y voluntad, porque allá dan mucho tiempo, dan 8 horas, o sea que se puede hacer caminando la mayoría. Muchísimas gracias de nuevo, a Dios, al colegio, a la vida, a mi papá y a mi mamá y a ustedes.
Era con este.
Acá, con este.
Qué cosa tan loca.
Colegio San Ignacio de Loyola, promoción 1978. Los compañeros y amigos de la promoción del Colegio San Ignacio de Loyola, en atención a tu perseverancia, compromiso e influencia positiva, queremos exaltar a Pablo Ignacio Restrepo Santamaría, Medellín, noviembre 25 de 2017. Sí, te cobré el texto.
Y no estamos en Camilo y se me ha salido el corazón.
Nos ofrezco de nuevo a Dios por habernos dejado existir, a mi papá y a mi mamá por habernos traído, a nuestros padres por habernos traído a la vida porque a los 57 años todavía se cuenta con una gasolina básica. Y el propósito en este momento, si Dios lo permite, es traer en total 20 medallas de allá de la Gran Manzana. Eso es siempre el propósito. Posiblemente uno ha muerto antes o tal vez el Señor le dejó traer ese propósito. Y esto a nivel atlético no tiene, digamos así, mayor valor porque no son tiempos. Quiero decir que quedé entre los últimos 220 de 50.636.
¡Bravo, Pablo!
Sí, perdón, fue 50.435, 220, 50.653. O sea, se necesita un poquito de personalidad para poder uno no dejarse achantar, pero lo que necesita es querer hacer las cosas.
Y
lo que digo a ustedes con mucho ánimo.
Pablo, y tener muy buena memoria, que es lo importante.
Voy a funcionar. Muchas gracias, muy querido ustedes. No me retiré por ustedes. No me podía retirar. Muchas gracias.
Pablo, qué orgullo.
Dice así: Colegio San Ignacio de Loyola, promoción 1978. Los compañeros de la promoción 1978 del Colegio San Ignacio de Loyola, en atención al compromiso, disposición y generosidad para las transmisiones, queremos agradecer y exaltar a Juan Felipe Vieira Gaviria, Medellín, noviembre 25 de 2017.
Para mí esto es una terapia espectacular.
¡Hola, Pipe! Pipe, eres un ángel con tanto diablo aquí, hombre. ¿Sí o no?
Sobre todo por lo del exterior, es muy representante.
Gracias, verdad.
Yo me siento del exterior, porque yo vuelvo y los veo. En serio.
Ahora sí, Juan Felipe, entonces continuamos con la actividad que planearon Helmut, Juan Felipe y Diego. Gracias. Quiero por último, perdón, decir algo, y aquí hay dos premios iguales para el técnico del club, el señor Javier Alonso Gallego Vázquez, que no pudo asistir. Me llamó a las 6 de la mañana, demasiado temprano, a decirme que había estado en una actividad aquí en el club y que había llegado casi que a las 3 de la mañana a su casa, que dejaba todo listo anoche y que no podía venir. Yo le conté que le teníamos pues algo así como un homenaje, y entonces el lunes pues le entregaba sus regalos. Y lo mismo pasa con la señora Alejandra Restrepo Suárez. ¿Y por qué quisimos hacer esto? Hombre, porque Alejandra es quien nos suministra este salón y nos cuida y nos presta el salón. Es la jefe de eventos. Entonces necesitamos que ella no solo agradecerle, sino que el próximo año nos siga teniendo en cuenta y nos ayude con la instalación. Y lo mismo a Javier Alonso, es quien le facilita toda esta logística a Juan Felipe para que él de forma temprana, mucho antes que nosotros, esté acá y pueda cuadrar todo eso que vemos, ese cableado con cintas, todo esto, aquello que implica venir normalmente 1 hora y media antes de lo que venimos todos. Gracias.
Bien, muy bien.
No nos dejan aquí.
No, aquí no dejan aquí.
You see entire houses being swept away by floodwaters in the west. Fires strike from one end of Texas to the other.
Tornadoes, a dozen tornadoes have already been spotted.
Liberals will say, oh, if it's cold, it's global warming. If it's snowy, it's global warming. If it's hot, it's global warming. There's nothing that doesn't prove that it's global warming.
The latest estimates for rebuilding from Irene, already $7 billion.
2011 now on track to be the most expensive year ever for weather-related damage. A drought of historic proportions has hit Nepal.
The horror of raging wildfires has again returned to Russia.
They say it was like nothing they've ever seen before.
16 of the last 20 years are the hottest on record.
The science is not you. It is him. No, quit saying that. The debate is totally over.
The globe is actually cooling, and has been cooling since 2002.
The consensus is that there is no consensus.
I mean, how do you not? Global warming is real.
You're about to self-implode.
The ice caps, the poles are not going to melt. The oceans are not going to flood the coast. I promise you, 20 years from today, I'll be the one that's laughing.
So what does that would happen if they just get really wet if I'm just in place?
No, you fall, you try to run, you bang your knee on a piece of ice, you bust your knee.
I have to get this picture.
First time I worked with James, it was obvious how he goes about things, you know?
All right, quickly. This light won't last forever.
He pushes it, he's looking for something.
You didn't have rope in the car?
Yeah.
Go back and get whatever you have. Okay. All right, I'm almost certain to get wet, okay? In fact, I think I'm so certain to get wet, I'll take my boots off.
And it was very interesting because it was his first real encounter at looking at ice in that way. He really did fall in love with it.
There's this limitless universe of forms out there that is just surreal, otherworldly. Sculptural, architectural, insanely, ridiculously beautiful. That's when I thought, okay, the story is in the ice. Somehow.
I was about 25 or so, I guess. And I was finishing my master's degree in geomorphology. And I loved the science, but I wasn't interested in being a scientist. The modern world of science was all about statistics and computer modeling, and that just wasn't me. I had no contacts in the photo world, I had no knowledge of the photo world, but youthful brashness can take you a long way, make things happen, so that's how it worked.
I had this idea that the most powerful issue of our time was the interaction of humans and nature. One of the subjects I started to look at involved people hunting. But they were bloody, gory, horrific pictures, hard to look at, hard for me to look at even today. And so when I had this idea to look at endangered wildlife, I realized that I needed to show these things in a more seductive fashion. I had to look at it in ways that would engage people, pull them in.
He's always taken the big view. You know, he's not looking at this little when he goes to slice. He's really looking at what humanity is doing from a very large perspective. This book, they force you to regard nature in a way that you're not accustomed to looking at it. He's forcing you to think. He's forcing me to think. And that's what I love about James's work.
You know, Ansel Adams was the father of all landscape photography, and he created a movement around wilderness that only images could do. And now you have James with that same kind of eye, but being able to do more with the technology.
It isn't just the drive to climb mountains and hang off cliffs. He has the ability to capture it and weigh in, communicate it. Observing it and knowing it is one thing. Sharing it and sharing it effectively can change the world.
I did a couple of years of research on the climate change story, trying to find what you could photograph about climate change that would make interesting photographs. And I eventually realized that the only thing that, to me, sounded right was ice.
He came to us with a proposal to do a profile of one glacier in Iceland. We essentially countered him. We said, well, look, why don't we just do bigger stuff? It was on the cover of the magazine. Most popular, most well-read story in the last 5 years.
As I was shooting that story, I started to get the very strong sense that this was a scouting mission for something much bigger and much longer term that was about to unfold. The Solheim Glacier, the Sunhouse Glacier in translation, is where I really first got it. The glacier had been receding several hundred feet a year, which is a lot. You normally have a little bit of advance in the wintertime and a little bit of retreat in the summertime. But when you see huge amounts of change, that's outside normal behavior.
There was a real sense of the glacier just coming to an end, and like this old, decrepit man just, falling into the earth and dying. It was very evocative, very emotional.
As a guy who's been mountaineering for basically my whole adult life, someone who's trained in earth sciences, I never imagined that you could see features this big disappearing in such a short period of time. But when I saw that, I realized, my God, there's a powerful piece of history that's unfolding in these pictures, and I have to go back to those same spots. So I set up a whole bunch of camera positions around that glacier where I would just go back and shoot a single frame. One in April, one in October, and we would just see how the glacier changed in 6 months.
That's exactly where the ice quality
That glacier had changed so much that, I'm not kidding, for like 3 hours we stood there looking at the prints of 6 months ago, looking at the glacier going, we must be wrong, we can't be in the right places.
Here to be from over there.
And when I saw those, the lights went off for me. I realized the public doesn't really hear about more statistical studies, more computer models, more projections. What they need is a believable, understandable piece of visual evidence, something that grabs them in the gut. So I created this project called the Extreme Ice Survey, or EIS. The initial goal was to put out 25 cameras for 3 years. They would shoot every hour as long as it was daylight. We would download the cameras every so often and turn those individual frames into video clips that would show you how the landscape was changing. I thought that basically you could just buy all this time-lapse equipment off the shelf, slam it together, and put it out there. I was so naive about that. There was a custom computer that needed to be built, and there were 1,000 little engineering details that needed to be worked out, and a lot of trial and error because people hadn't built this stuff before.
And it was clear to me it would have to be a team effort.
I wasn't that into photography, but I talked him into letting me come up here and have a look at the system because I was curious and I really wanted to do whatever I could to get my foot in the door.
Bob, this is the field assistant in Iceland.
You ready?
As ready as I can be. These are just really attractive because I think they're more picturesque and they're still big glaciers.
Jason had a deep well of experience about Greenland's glaciers, about Greenland logistics, about what the glaciers were doing. Dad's a glaciologist. He's the grandfather, the godfather of the knowledge base about those glaciers in Alaska.
The scope and the scale of EIS is bigger than any other project since I've known it. They would work all day in our little, used to be our garage, turned into a workshop, till sometimes 11, 12 o'clock at night.
James sent me a gear list of things that I had never heard. I mean, ice axes and crampons, all this technical climbing gear that I had never used before. I remember thinking, I never want to do ice climbing or ice-related stuff. It's dangerous, I'm gonna die. But of course, I still went with James to Iceland.
I'm just saying, Jesus Christ.
I'm just emphasizing how bad the weather is. Yeah, I don't need it. I get it.
The essence of the camera systems is based on putting really delicate electronics into the harshest conditions on the planet.
They have to withstand hurricane force winds.
Negative 40-degree temperatures.
It's not the nicest environment for technology to be sitting out.
Whatever the dangers of that boulder are, that's a better spot than this is. But we found a place to hide the camera. That's the good news. The bad news is we've got a major engineering project to try and get that thing anchored and supported. This thing is loose. Look how soft this stuff is. Yeah, it's got to be this section right here. The other way around. This is fantastic because it's exactly what we wanted. So here we go. The first eyeballs on the glacier, finally.
Let's see what a couple of years brings to us.
We installed 5 cameras in total on that trip. After that, we went on to Greenland.
When glaciers break these gigantic icebergs off into the ocean, it's called calving, C-A-L-V-I-N-G. Ever since glaciers have entered the ocean, hundreds of thousands of years ago, ice has always calved off. But what we're seeing now is the Greenland ice sheet thinning out and dumping ever more ice and water into the ocean.
Okay, good. Yep, right up here. Yeah, it's sort of like doing a portrait of people. You know, Richard Avedon and Irving Penn spent their entire careers doing portraits of faces, essentially, and found endless variation and endless beauty and endless magic in those faces. And for me, that's the same thing as what's going on here. You know, you feel that this tension between this huge, enduring power of these glaciers and their fragility. You know, they came from a great impassive place, and now they're crumbling into these tiny little blocks of ice going off into the ocean. Crazy.
On my first trip to Greenland, we were setting up one of the cameras at Store Glacier. When we got there, we saw this really bizarre-looking peninsula just kind of perched out at the front of the calving face of the glacier where the glacier ends.
This thing is going to break off all summer long, man. Look at this. Those peninsulas are just a matter of days, at most a couple of weeks.
It was huge. It was 5 football fields long, 1,500 feet long, and about 300 feet above the surface of the water. As we're setting up the cameras, we also set up a video camera and had it pointed right there at that peninsula, and we just had it rolling, just in case.
Oh my God, I crashed this morning. You got the whole island is going away. Report back.
We were there for just a 1 hour period of time, and absurdly, somehow, unfortunately, captured an event that seldom is caught on film.
This is really big stuff happening right under our noses right now. But I feel like time is clicking, you know, and we need to get these cameras out here.
Okay, onward. The logistics of things are just like crazy. It reminds you how far he's willing to take an idea.
This is tonight's dinner, I just found out.
Eight, 7, 6, 5.
Oh, this is the way to travel, my friend. We ended up installing about a dozen cameras in Greenland, 5 in Iceland, 5 in Alaska, and 2 in Montana. Frankly, I can't believe that we actually managed to pull this off.
You know, about 20 years ago, I was a skeptic about climate change. I thought it was based on computer models. I thought maybe there was a lot of hyperbole that was turning this into an activist cause. But most importantly, I didn't think that humans were capable of changing the basic physics and chemistry of this entire huge planet. It didn't seem probable. It didn't seem possible. Then I learned about the record that's in the ice cores, the history of ancient climate that was embedded in those cores, and the story that the glaciers were telling.
The Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets are these giant domes of ice that preserve climate records very much like tree roots. Snow is added to the top, turns into ice, and ice core scientists can drill holes through the ice sheets and pull out a core and examine not only the ice, but also bubbles of ancient air that are trapped in the ice. By looking at the chemistry of the ice, we can learn about past temperature, and by looking at the air, we can actually measure the carbon dioxide content. And one of the things we learn is that past temperature and carbon dioxide vary together. They go up together, they go down together. And over the last 800,000 years or so, atmospheric carbon dioxide was never higher than about 280 parts per million. Until we started adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. And now it's about 390 parts per million. That's about 40% higher than it was when carbon dioxide was only varying for natural reasons. Now we're headed for 500 parts per million or more.
That pace is 100 to 1,000 times greater than the pace at which things have changed by themselves naturally. The amazing thing to me is that we're already seeing impacts because the change already has been so small, right? It's been 0.8 degrees C, about 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit since 1850 or so. And yet we've seen so much stuff, crazy stuff going on already.
What counts to me more than the notion of climate changing is that the air is changing. The air that we live with, the air that sustains us, the basic physics and chemistry of that air is changing. This is about the stuff that you and I breathe, and that affects everything in the agriculture, the water supply, and the biology of all the plants and animals around us.
Plants and animals are already going extinct. They're going extinct 100 times faster now than they did 1,000 years ago. And as the climate continues to warm, we're going to lose more and more and more species because we're going to have more surprises happening. We are going to have a mass extinction event that could happen within the next 200 to 300 years. Mass extinction event means that we lose half or maybe 3/4 of the number of species that we have on the planet. Are we going to be losing the plants that clean our water, the plants that clean our air? If there's no pollinators out there to pollinate, then we're going to have to do it by hand. And they're already doing that in China, having to go out and pollinate the crops by hand.
In the last 20 years, we've lost close to 20% of the forest area in Arizona, New Mexico. And that's high mortality in those forest areas. We have seen increasing in the length of the fire season by more than 2 months. Larger fires in the western United States in the last 20 years. And we've seen hotter fires, more extreme fires burning. It's not just by chance that I'm seeing many rare events happening all in sequence. You know, there's a reason for that. We're seeing extraordinary changes in our environment.
Unión is the world's largest reinsurance company, and our business model is to provide insurance for the insurance companies. Anthony Greek is a major reinsurer for natural perils, natural catastrophes. We need to know the risks as best as we can. We have discovered some trends in the number and in the losses natural perils have caused. And interestingly, for the weather-related events, our activities, primarily greenhouse gas emissions, are already contributing to more intent and more events. It cannot be explained by just better reporting. It has to be explained by changes in the atmospheric conditions.
Imagine a baseball player on steroids who steps up to the plate and hits home run. Can you attribute that home run to his taking steroids? Well, steroids occur naturally in very small amounts in your system. By adding just a little bit to those steroids, you can change your background physical state and increase your chances for enhanced performance. And that's exactly what happened in the climate system. Greenhouse gases occur in very small amounts. By increasing that just a little bit, you change the background state of the system and make it much more susceptible to increased extremes.
If you had an abscess in your tooth, would you keep going to dentist after dentist until you found a dentist who said, don't worry about it, leave that rotten tooth in? Or would you pull it out because most of the other dentists told you you had none? That's sort of what we're doing with climate change. We've been arguing about this for centuries. And we're still arguing about a minor thing called evolution, a minor thing about whether man actually walked on the moon. We don't have time.
We have no one present in number 2, so I jump on in number 2. We cannot forward with one engine.
You look out that window at that seawater with icebergs floating around in there, and you realize we go in that, we'll have 5 minutes of physical function and 10 minutes with that.
The fire mechanic will be on standby in case we need their help.
He needs to do his adventures. That's what makes him who he is. That's who the man is. That's who I love. That's who I married. Do I wish sometimes that it was closer and he would come home at night at 5 o'clock? As a wife, yes. As a human being, it needs to continue, so.
He's on this never-ending quest for something. He's just going and hoping that something that he's doing is taking him in the right direction. And I think that EIS is it. He's looking to make a global, worldwide impact. I've never seen him so passionate about a project before.
That's right. It's my job to go out there every couple of months to visit the cameras, to go over if everything is okay. There's always a possibility that this would happen. This whole piece was tracked off in one part, flew off into whoever does that. The rock obviously did not read a warning.
It's only shot 80 pictures in the past 24 hours, which is somewhat weird. The effect is very weird.
You could still shoot. Come on, please. Please work. It's dead. Has to be there.
So everything we're trying is getting thwarted.
Zebras. We're getting zebras again.
Oh.
We've had numerous timer failures. We've had cameras buried under 15 or 20 feet of snow. We've had plexiglass windows sandblasted. We've had batteries explode inside the camera boxes.
Bird just kind of pecking away at it.
This is what a fox does. Your cables been out looking.
He had spent a lot of money, grants, personal money, getting to Alaska, getting to Greenland. And when you go out there, you want it to work. And when something doesn't work, you feel so far from anything and anyone that can help you.
I think they're gonna go directly.
All of that obsession means absolutely nothing if a little electronic piece that big doesn't work.
If I don't have pictures, I don't have anything. You know, everything is a failure.
No, it's dead. It's not working. Period, flat out, just dead. It's dead. God, after all this, it makes me insane. Like, fucking insane.
It's hard to see somebody that you love chase after something that might not ever happen.
See that white down there? There's a white dot on something's happening inside the timer.
After months of troubleshooting, we realized that the core problem was in the voltage regulator and in this little computer timer, this custom-made computer that told the cameras when to fire.
We worked with these guys at National Geographic, and we sat down and redesigned the controllers.
We switched to an entirely different kind of circuit that used less power, is a lot more reliable because it has a simpler electronic circuitry inside.
That was the turning point for the whole system.
We had to replace all the old timers and had to wait for a whole season to check on them again and make sure that they were working.
Gotta be getting close. We'll be able to see it up here. Yeah. Okay. All right, this is a big one. Okay, here goes. Playback. March 11th, 2008. It just shot. It's been working all winter. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, well. I can't believe that worked. How cool has it been out here for how long? I'm unbelievably surprised.
We have over 2,300 frames
Since June.
and everything's working.
It's been shooting the entire time. Fantastic. Here's the memory of the camera, and this is actually, that's an interesting thought. This is the memory of the landscape. That landscape is gone. It may never be seen again in the history of civilization, and it's stored right here. In 1984, the glacier was down there 11 miles away. Today, back here, receded 11 miles. The glacier is retreating, but it's also thinning at the same time. It's like air being let out of the balloon. You can see what's called the trim line. It's the high water mark of the glacier, 1984. That vertical change is the height of the Empire State Building.
You know, we're really in the midst of geologic scale change. You know, our brains are programmed to think that geology is something that happened a long time ago or will happen a long time in the future. And we don't think that that can happen during these little years that we each live on this planet. But the reality is that it does, that things can happen very, very, very quickly. We're living through one of those moments of epochal geologic change right now. And we humans are causing it.
Up and down the edges of the ice sheet, there's this zone called the melt zone. This is where the sheet is melting, and that stored water from the ice sheet is running out to sea.
I'm wrapping my knees for the day's festivities. This knee has had 2 surgeries on it already. It really could use a third.
It's like the surface of the moon. Look at those holes.
Oh my gosh, look at this stuff. I had no idea it was so thick in here. This stuff, this cryogonite, is made from a combination of natural dust that blows in from the deserts of Central Asia, mixed with little flakes of carbon, fine particles of soot that come from wildfires, diesel exhaust, and coal-fired power plants. And on top of it, there's algae that grows out here. All of that stuff accumulates in these little holes, and because it's black, it absorbs the sun's heat more than the surrounding ice does. And all over the surface of the ice sheet, there's literally billions of these little cryogonite holes melting away, filling up with water. And when you look down at those holes, you can actually see these little bubbles of ancient air being released as the ice sheet melts. The part of Greenland that's melting is out on the edges of the ice sheet. And that area is growing and it's moving higher up onto the ice sheet as the climate changes in that part of the world.
You see all this water melting down through these Swiss cheese holes, and you see it melting down through the channels. It goes from little channels into big channels, and eventually everything drops vertically down through these big little land caverns. It goes down to the bottom of the ice sheet and out to the ocean.
Ordinarily, you may climb a little warmer, the glacier shrinks a little bit. You may climb a little colder, the glacier grows a little bit. And those two things kind of work to maintain balance. But if it gets too warm, the ice gets too thin, it doesn't respond just a little bit. The volume drops. You cross that tipping point, climate no longer matters. It's irreversible. It's just going to keep going.
The sea level rise that will happen in my daughter's lifetimes will be somewhere between 1.5 and 3 feet, minimum. That doesn't sound like a lot if you live up in the Rocky Mountains, but if you live down in Chesapeake Bay, along the Gulf Coast of the United States, in the Ganges floodplain, that matters a lot. It matters in China, it matters in Indonesia. A minimum of 150 million people will be displaced. It's like approximately half the size of the United States. And all those people are going to be flushed out and have to move somewhere else. It also intensifies the impact of hurricanes and typhoons. It means that there's a lot more high water along the coastline, so when these big storms come, it pushes that much more water that much further inland. That's where our story of Greenland climate change is expressed. It's in that meltwater rushing out to the ocean. That's what we're photographing. That's what I've been up there trying to document.
And I've seen this thing from your photos and sat pictures, but to be here is incredible. So coming a little more real.
While we're heading over, why don't I walk over there and give you some scale?
Sure. Just be careful. Don't get too close to the edge, all right? Stay up where it's flat. This is really something.
It's terrifying.
This isn't a 10-foot little hole in the ground, it's 100 feet deep into an abyss. If you don't have that little dot of a person to scale, then it's lost.
Yeah, it's fabulous. This is a reasonable route right here. Look at that.
Oh yeah.
That's like a
This is the dangerous spot.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, and then the other danger is that the whole thing suddenly implodes and the entire thing collapses, but I don't think that's very likely.
This Mulan is one of thousands of Mulans all over the Mount Zone in Greenland. Every day, the ice is cooking down and water is pouring into the ocean. It's enormous. You can't wrap your head around how much water is coming out of this place.
Joe, look.
It's all calculated risk. It's not like we're just going out there playing Russian roulette.
Piece of cake. Oh, there's all sorts of curious crinkling and crunching effects in my meat. Not what the doctor ordered. All right. Look down! Look down! Look down! It's just bottomless. Oh my God. I do not want to go any lower than this. I'm going under on this broken fin. Okay? I assume it won't collapse. Okay. Hold on. Close it. Yes, there. There were audible chunks of gravel-like substances that I could feel rolling around in there. Bionic man. I was covering up the soreness with anti-inflammatories and painkillers so that I could function and feel it. I would think, oh, it's pretty good, not so bad. But the drugs were masking the symptoms way more than I had realized.
More people are becoming increasingly skeptical about the existence of climate change.
The so-called climate scientists are hoodwinking the entire world community. There is no consensus. This is a myth.
The notion that man-made gases and methane gases, CO2,
caused global warming is probably the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people.
All of this garbage science has been a total fraud and a fake.
Jim was told after his surgery that hiking is not a form of exercise that they want him to pursue anymore. I'm not sure that's sunken in quite yet.
I think when we started out, the glacier was approximately right here. Might have been there, might have been here. It's in this zone somewhere. Look at this. In 05, you couldn't even look into the canyon because the factor look was all filled up at that point. Look how low it is now. And that's 2007. That isn't even 2005. In 2007, just 2 years ago, you couldn't see any of that mountain ridge over it. The thing is displayed tremendous. I mean, I don't know what the feet is, but a lot. I haven't seen it in the pictures. I wouldn't believe it all. When I saw that glacier dying, it was like, wow, you know, if a glacier that's been here for 30,000 years or 100,000 years is literally dying in front of my eyes, you're very aware of the fact that sometime you go out over the horizon and you don't come back.
James is now doing exactly what his doctor said he shouldn't be doing.
Okay.
Yes, there you go.
It feels worse this morning than it has any day since the surgery. It felt better the 3 days after the surgery than it feels right now. I think that the best that can be said about this is on the safety ladder. You can maybe limp your way up, but you can't go down that.
Unless you're in a wheelchair.
I mean, we need to go up there, check out the camera and all that, but you don't necessarily need to do it. I mean, that's more of a climb than we did in the past 2 days.
Hard time letting that views go.
You want to help your, that's why your knee's like this.
You guys should at least go and look at one of the cameras, get it down with, get the computer changed today. Okay?
See the road?
once in a while, I get this thing in the back of my head saying, what were you thinking? Maybe that office job wasn't so bad. What? After the sandwich, I'm totally happy to be here. But this project is, now we're 2 years in. We have like hundreds of thousands of images.
It feels like, yeah, he goes to that point where he can't anymore, and sometimes you feel he's going further. Yeah, you hear him speak about it. He says, well, so I'll just do a fourth knee surgery, you know? Like, however many it takes to keep him going. Like, most people say, I'm gonna get knee surgery to fix me, you know, to make it better. For him, it's to make it better so that he can keep on pushing it, destroying it basically, and then maybe he'll just have to do it again.
Okay, so if you're ready for another exposure, do it exactly as you just did it, okay? You ready? Okay. Oh, got one thing. That's right. Way back early in my career, I discovered that there was really something special about photographing at night that places your mind on the surface of a planet. You're no longer just a human being walking around in the regular world. You're a human animal striding around on the surface of a planet that's out in the middle of the galaxy. We as a culture, we're forgetting that we are actually natural organisms and that we have this very, very deep connection and contact with nature. We can't divorce civilization from nature. We totally depend on it.
Shortly after that, he sent us on this month-long massive trip to a place that's really hard to get to. You get a shot that is just, it was such a shot in the dark. The idea spawned from this one glacier called Storr. That event was so spectacular, we decided, okay, we gotta go back and go to the big glacier, Lewis Glacier, and sit and wait.
We're gonna try to catch some big cabin events. Kilometer wide pieces of ice coming off of this massive, massive glacier.
The Lullesac Glacier is kind of like the mother of all glaciers in Greenland. It is the most productive glacier in the northern hemisphere. It's rumored that this is the glacier that put out the iceberg that sank the Titanic. It flows at 130 feet every day. This is a really, really huge fjord of ice, and it's about 5 miles wide.
It's massive.
My father-in-law.
He's about to turn and go in front of the peninsula and he thinks he's gonna go. He's at the base of it.
What's up? My boots are frozen. I'm really tired. And nothing happens for days and days and days. We call it glacier watching.
Because literally it was just me and Adam for 3 weeks watching ice.
Photography for me has been, as much as anything, about a raising of awareness. Through that camera, we become vehicles to raise awareness outside my own experience. And in this case, we are the messengers.
He is a visionary, and his works are like sacred objects. I present James Baylor.
Well, thank you so much. Can we dim the house lights up a little bit more? That's it, better.
What I'm here to do tonight is bring to you tangible visual evidence of the immediacy of climate change itself.
Glaciers matter because they're the canary in the global coal mine. It's the place where you can see climate change happening.
Without further ado, let me tell you what we've been seeing out there. This is a glacier called the Solheim Glacier. We're looking down on it.
Now we turn on our time lapse.
You can see the terminus retreating, you can see this river being formed, you can see it deflating. Go back a couple years in time, that's where it started. That's where it ended a few months ago. Now down onto the side of the glacier, looking across the terminus, this is what we see.
Look at this. You'll see deflation happening here as the heat takes away the surface of the glacier and the surface drops. At the same time, the stream is undercutting it from the glacier that's melting faster up valley, washing this thing away. The vast majority of glaciers in the world are retreating. Glacier National Park, Montana will need a new name. We'll be calling it Glacier Less National Park by the middle of the century because all the glaciers will be gone.
Such a strange, bizarre fascination in seeing these things you don't normally get to see in alive. At the Columbia Glacier in Alaska, this is a view of what's called a calving phase. This is what one of our cameras saw over the course of a few months. The action in Columbia is in part due to local glacier dynamics and in part due to climate change. Here's another time-lapse shot of Columbia. Everybody says, well, don't they advance in the wintertime? No, it was retreating through the winter because it's an unhealthy glacier. We realized it was retreating so far, we had to turn the camera upstream to follow the retreat. Then we had to pivot it again. And then, when we went back this past August, it was so far out of frame, we had to turn the camera one more time so we could still see the glacier. So that's where we started 3 years ago, way out on the left. That's where we were a few months ago, last time we were into Columbia.
James Baylor is documenting the melting of glaciers around the world, the most visible manifestations of climate change on the planet. And he's making it possible for scientists to watch too.
James Baylor is founder and director of the Extreme Ice Survey, who's joining us now from Denver. James, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure, thank you.
We'll also have more of our special report on a man who lets his pictures do the talking.
As a photographer, it's exciting to see this stuff, but as a citizen of the world, you go, this is horrible.
And consider who NASA is sending as a delegate to the Climate Change Summit in Copenhagen. Jim Balog, a photographer with the group Extreme Ice Survey.
Prior to '06, the glacier had retreated 10, 11 miles, and now we've added, just in the past few years, another 2.5 miles.
One of the things you often hear in the debate about glacier change is that there are glaciers around the world which are also getting bigger and advancing. So how can that be? How can that be a response to a global warming signal? What we've done recently on the Yukon Territory in Canada, where we looked at the change in glacier area from 1958 to 2008. And what we found was that the 1,400 glaciers that were there in 1958, 4 got bigger. Over 300 disappeared completely, and almost all of the rest got smaller. Yes, there is a component of natural variability in the climate change we observed, but it's not enough to explain the full signal. So there has to be a greenhouse gas element to it.
Up to the Illuminati Glacier calving face, a little helicopter is shown for scale. The Atlantic Ocean is on the left side of the frame, covered with icebergs so thick. Walk across the ocean.
I'm on the phone with Jim on one of our regular check-ins. Jim, nothing's happening.
It's going well. We had some serious bouts of wind. But other than that, things are fairly well set up.
It's starting up, I think, sorry.
Yeah. Let me call you back. Okay, bye.
Yeah, that lead section right there. Boy, look at that, I think we're going one more right here. Look at that.
You see, look at the whole thing.
Calving face is 300, sometimes 400 feet tall. Pieces of ice were shooting up out of the ocean 600 feet and then falling. The only way that you can really try to put it into scale with human references is if you imagine Manhattan. And all of a sudden, all of those buildings just start to rumble and quake and peel off and just fall over, and roll around. This whole massive city just breaking apart in front of your eyes. We're just observers. These two little dots on the side of the mountain. We watched and recorded the largest witness calving event ever caught on tape.
So how big was this calving event that we just looked at? We'll resort to some illustrations again to give you a sense of scale.
as if the entire lower tip of Manhattan broke off, except that the thickness, the height of it, is equivalent to buildings that are 2.5 or 3 times higher than they are. That's a magical, miraculous, horrible, scary thing. I don't know that anybody's really seen the miracle and horror of that. It took 100 years for it to retreat 8 miles, from 1900 to 2000. From 2000 to 2010, it retreated 9 miles. So in 10 years, it retreated more than it had in the previous 100. It's real. The changes are happening. They're very visible. They're photographable. They're measurable. There's no significant scientific dispute about that. And the great irony and tragedy of our time is that a lot of the general public thinks that science is still arguing about that. Science is not arguing about that.
One of the really troubling things about climate change is that almost all of the world's prestigious climatologists are much more frightened about all this than the public is.
People have a hard time understanding when we talk about climate change. But for me, it's so powerful and actually unprecedented in the work that he is doing, is visualizing the change that allows us to actually see what was and what is becoming.
I actually saw his work last spring, and that kind of changed my life in the sense that I had to quit what I was doing, which was working for Shell, and get involved in this debate in a much more profound way.
The Extreme Ice Survey will go down in history as this is the evidence that we knew what was going on. You can't deny it.
We don't have a problem with economics, technology, and public policy. We have a problem with perception, because none of the people really get it yet. I believe we have an opportunity right now. We are nearly on the edge of the crisis, but we still have an opportunity to face the greatest challenge of our generation, and in fact, of our century. Thank you. When my daughters, Simone and Emily, look at me 25 or 30 years from now and say, what were you doing? When global warming was happening and you guys knew what was coming down the road, I want to be able to say, guys, I was doing everything I knew how to do.
Cold feet, and now so much left to do.
Ahora sí, la pelota.